Hey foodies, today I'm going to be showing you guys how to make this delicious Valentine's Day dinner for two. I'm going to be making stuffed salmon, roasted asparagus, mac and cheese, and some shrimp and some garlic and herb butter sauce. So let's start cooking. All right, so first I'm going to start off with the mac and cheese because that's going to take the longest to make. I'm just going to add some oil and some salt to my water as well as the noodles, and I'm just going to go ahead and let that cook until it is al dente. You want to make sure you don't overcook that, and I'm also going to make sure I stir this occasionally, that way our noodles don't stick together. Now once that is done, I'm going to go ahead and drain my noodles, and I'm going to add that to a pan. I'm going to add in half a stick of butter, and we're just going to stir that until that melts. All right, so now I'm gonna add a little bit of seasoning to my noodles. I'm gonna add 2 teaspoons of creole seasoning, and then I'm gonna add 1 teaspoon of black pepper, and then 1 teaspoon of garlic powder. And then I'm gonna go ahead and give that a good mix, and that butter is gonna help that seasoning stick to our noodles. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and set that aside, and I'm gonna get started cutting up these cheeses. I'm going to be using 1 block of Cracker Barrel cheese, white cheddar. Now you can use any cheese of your choice. These are just my cheeses that I like to use when I make mac and cheese. And I'm just going to cut these into little squares. You can use a cheese grater. I didn't have one, so I just cut these into blocks, and that was fine for me. Okay, now I'm going to use extra sharp Vermont cheddar cheese, and I'm just going to repeat the same steps. All right, so now I'm gonna get started on my cheese sauce. I'm gonna be using 1 cup of heavy cream and 1 cup of evaporated milk. And I'm gonna make sure I cook that on a medium to low. And I'm just gonna keep stirring that until it starts to thicken a little bit. Once it starts to thicken a little bit, I'm gonna add in my cheddar cheese condensed soup. I'm gonna be using 2 cans of this. Once you have added in the 2 cans of cheddar cheese soup, you want to go ahead and give that a good mix. Keep stirring that until it is a smooth, thick consistency. Once the sauce starts to thicken, you want to make sure you turn your heat down to a low setting. And then I'm going to add in half of the cheddar cheese blocks that we chopped up. And then I'm going to give that a good stir. Once that has melted, I'm going to add in 1 bag of cheddar cheese, and I'm going to mix that in as well. And you want to make sure your stove is on low heat so you do not burn your cheese. Okay, so now I'm going to add in 1 teaspoon of salt and a teaspoon of sugar just to balance out that sharp taste of the cheese. And I'm going to mix that all together. And lastly, I'm going to add in those noodles gradually. And then I'm just going to go ahead and make sure I stir that in well so everything is well combined. All right, so now I'm gonna go ahead and transfer the mac into my skillet, and I'm only gonna add half of my mac and cheese. I'm gonna smear that out. Then I'm gonna add the remainder of the white cheddar cheese that we did not use. And that's just gonna make this mac and cheese real cheesy, and it's gonna have those pockets that just melt in your mouth when you bite into it. All right, so now I'm gonna add another layer of mac and cheese. And of course, you want to smear that and make sure it covers and that it's leveled. Then lastly, I'm going to add some cheddar cheese on top. Make sure you add a generous amount. Then I'm going to cover this with foil, and I'm going to put this in the oven on 350 for about 30 minutes. So after 30 minutes, you want to go ahead and remove that foil and cook that uncovered for an additional 20 minutes. So this is what the mac and cheese looks like when it comes right out the oven. As you can see, it is super cheesy and it has that nice golden crust on top. Now let's move on to the stuffed salmon. So I'm gonna start off by melting a half a stick of butter, and I'm gonna add 2 tablespoons of honey to that. Then I'm gonna add the juice from a half of a lemon, and I'm gonna mix everything together until it's a smooth, light consistency. All right, so now I'm gonna add 3 sprigs of thyme, and how I'm gonna add that is I'm just gonna remove it from that stem, and that's gonna really bring out the flavor in this honey butter sauce. All right, so now I'm gonna set aside the seasoning that I'm gonna be using. I'm gonna be using 1 teaspoon of chili powder, 2 teaspoons of garlic powder, 2 teaspoons of creole seasoning, 2 teaspoons of garlic and herb seasoning. So now I'm just gonna go ahead and mix that together. And we have our seasoning. And this is the stuffing that I'm gonna be using. If you wanna know how I made this stuffing, make sure you check the description box. I will have that listed below, as well as I will have all of the recipes for everything else. So this is the salmon that I'm gonna be using. As you can see, it's really big. So I'm gonna cut this in 2 pieces. All right, so now I'm gonna go ahead and cut the pockets. It's very important to get a salmon that is on the thicker side, so it's easier to cut these pockets. So it's pretty simple to make a pocket. You wanna make sure you lay your palm on the salmon. That way the salmon doesn't move. And you just wanna bring your knife back and forth, making a pocket, making sure you take your time so you don't cut any holes. All right, so now that we're done with that, I'm gonna take the butter sauce and we're gonna take a brush and we're gonna brush that directly onto our salmon. And that's gonna help our seasoning stick better to the salmon and not fall off. And it's also gonna obviously add flavor since we added honey, lemon, and butter and some herbs in there as well. All right, so now it's time to add our seasoning. I'm not gonna be using all of the seasoning in the bowl. I'm only gonna be using half because the other half you wanna set aside because that's the seasoning we're gonna be using to season up our shrimp. All right, so now we're almost done. We're just gonna go ahead and stuff these. You wanna make sure you push that stuffing in there. You could pack it in as long as you push it in there just to make sure none of that stuffing leaks out. And I'm gonna go ahead and repeat the same steps with my other salmon. All right, so now we're just gonna put this in a baking dish, cover this with some foil, and place this in the oven on 350 for about 20 minutes. After 20 minutes, I'm gonna put this on broil for a minute, just so the top could brown a little bit. So now I'm gonna go ahead and take that out and we can get started on these shrimps. This is a pound of shrimp that has been peeled and deveined. I'm just gonna go in and add the remainder of that seasoning and mix that all together. My skillet on a medium heat, add in a half a stick of butter. Once that has melted a bit, I'm gonna add in some aromatics. I'm gonna add in some rosemary and thyme. Also about 2 cloves of garlic chopped finely. That cook for about 2 minutes before I add in the shrimp. Then I'm gonna let that shrimp cook for about 7 minutes or until it is pink in color and it starts to shrivel up a bit. Once that shrimp is done, I'm gonna go ahead and remove that from the pan and also take half of that butter sauce, leave the other half in the pan, and I'm gonna add 1 tablespoon of butter and 2 cloves of garlic chopped finely. I'm just gonna go ahead and let that simmer until that is cooked, and we're gonna take that sauce and pour it directly onto our asparagus. Now you wanna go in with a spoon or even your hands and just mix that all together and make sure that butter is evenly coated. Now I'm gonna add in about 2 teaspoons of complete seasoning, and we're gonna pop this in the oven on 420 for about 15 to 20 minutes, depending on how done you like your asparagus. And there you go, you have garlic roasted asparagus. Okay, so now that we're done with everything, I'm gonna go ahead and plate this. I'm gonna add the asparagus, the stuffed salmon, add some shrimp on top, and add the mac and cheese on the side. I hope you guys enjoyed this easy Valentine's Day meal. If you did, let me know in the comment section below. If you guys try this recipe, let me know how it came out. I know I enjoyed it. I'm also going to be making another Valentine's Day recipe, so make sure you check that out as well. Also, make sure you check the description box below. I will be having all of the recipes posted there. Also, be sure to give this video a like and subscribe. That way you do not miss a new recipe. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.